Welcome back to the 50 State Cold Case Spotlight, and today we are in Wisconsin for day 3, and I will be spotlighting the case of Kelly Nolan. Kelly grew up in Waunakee and graduated in 2003. Her principal said that Kelly was a good student, smart, athletic, artistic, with a bright future ahead of her. Here's her sister April talking about them growing up.
We were into the Spice Girls. We did like a Spice Girls play. We did, I don't even know, so many different music performances and plays in our basement as kids, which I would never want anybody to see those, nor would Kelly.
Megan, one of Kelly's coworkers and friends, described Kelly as always up for a good time like any college student. In 2007, Kelly was majoring in communications and was excited about a new journalism course that she would be taking this fall. On Friday, June 22nd, 2007, Kelly, 22, a University of Wisconsin student, and friends decided to go out for a night out at a local bar in Madison. Around 11:30 p.m., Kelly's friends decided that they were done for the night and they were heading home, but Kelly wasn't ready to go home yet. Kelly said goodbye to her friends and headed to what her friends believed was another bar. Witnesses do remember seeing Kelly on State Street in Madison around 2 a.m. Kelly had been subleasing an apartment downtown in Madison that summer, but she would never make it back to that apartment and she would never be seen again. The following day, Kelly's friends and family were trying to get a hold of her, and when they realized that no one could, that's when they got concerned and reported her missing to the police department. The Madison Police Department did make a public appeal sharing Kelly's information, but they waited to search for her in hopes that she would show up in a few days. Once it was a week and no one had heard from Kelly and nobody knew her whereabouts, that's when investigators would conduct a check of the Lakeshore area and call local hospitals looking for Kelly. Kelly's friends and relatives had hit the ground running like most families do from the very beginning, and they were out handing missing person flyers throughout Madison and distributing flyers to people who they saw on the street. They also held a candlelight vigil in downtown Madison in hopes of raising awareness in the community about Kelly. Over 50 people attended this visual, and Kelly's mother, Mary Jane, told the community that she was grateful for their support and she had a message for her daughter. Quote, "We are going to find you. Kelly, wherever you are, we are going to bring you home and we are going to be back to the way we were as a family having good times." Unquote. Shortly after that, Kelly's story was being picked up by local media, and her sister April would tell reporters that she knew that her sister had left the downtown area around 11:30 p.m., saying, quote, "She was by herself at the time, and beyond that, no one knows exactly for sure who she was with or where all she went," unquote. April went on to tell reporters that she did speak to her sister on the phone earlier that Saturday morning, but she was asked by detectives not to discuss that call or any of its details because it could jeopardize the investigation. Investigators stated early on that they were receiving some tips and making sure to follow up on all of them, but they hadn't found any evidence to suggest that Kelly had been a victim of foul play, but they also weren't able to rule it out at this point either. On July 2nd, 2007, Kelly's story would air on a national news station, and investigators say that's when the phones would begin to ring off the hook. Detectives were able to secure surveillance video from downtown businesses and were searching for signs of Kelly in hopes of figuring out which direction she had gone after she parted ways with her friends. At this point, they decided to release a photo of a purse Kelly would have been carrying when she went missing in hopes it could jog someone's memory. As the days wore on, Kelly's friends, family, and coworkers were beginning to worry about her because this wasn't like Kelly, for none of them to hear from her at all. At this point, nobody who knew Kelly believed that she left voluntarily or that she would run away from her life. The morning that she went missing, she had gone on a job interview and was hoping to start that job soon so she could start saving money before her senior year that started that fall. On July 7, Kelly's family would announce that they were now offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to Kelly's return or an arrest or conviction in the person responsible for her disappearance. On that same day, reporters released that they had learned that Kelly had left the bar called Lava Lounge around 2 a.m. on Saturday with a young man named Andrew, who walked her halfway to her apartment. When he saw that Kelly was missing, he called the police and informed them about this interaction, saying that he was on his way back to Kelly's place with her when they ran into another young man who knew Kelly on their walk, and that man and Kelly left together. Investigators were able to pull information from Kelly's cell phone, and this would prompt them to search a wooded area about 10 miles away from where Kelly was last seen. And on July 9th, 2007, searchers in a wooded area off of Schneider Drive in Dunn would find Kelly's remains. This massive property where Kelly's remains were found belonged to an 86-year-old woman who is not a suspect. Kelly's remains were found about 15 feet away from the road. Search teams were set to scan the wooded area surrounding her remains in hope to find clues that might lead them to who Kelly's killer was. Investigators said after conducting this search that they had no suspects at this point. They said they couldn't rule out that she was a victim of a stranger, but they also couldn't rule out that she left with an acquaintance or someone who was something more to her. Kelly's cause of death was listed as blunt force trauma to the torso, and the exact time of her death was not established. However, investigators do believe she was killed shortly after she was last seen around 2 a.m. A month later, investigators stated that they still didn't have any suspects, but they had some promising leads, and they had collected a lot of forensic evidence from the crime scene, and they had sent that out to a crime lab and were still waiting on results. Both men that were with Kelly that night voluntarily came forward, and each admitted to walking her halfway to her home. And after interviewing both men, investigators were able to rule them out as possible suspects. In the first year after their investigation, over 600 people were interviewed, and investigators followed up on more than 100 tips, but they weren't any closer to solving Kelly's case. Investigators and Kelly's family have remained committed to finding Kelly's murderer and believe that there are people in Madison in the area that know exactly what happened to Kelly, and they are begging them to come forward. In June of 2022, the reward in Kelly's case is increased to $25,000 by Kelly's family in an attempt to finally get answers in Kelly's case. In 2023, investigators said that they were never able to develop any solid suspects and haven't shared with the public what evidence they have in her case. Kelly's family is not giving up, and they are pleading for someone to come forward.
I'll just stay awake and just, I don't know, search stuff on the internet that I think will somehow lead to information that maybe I'll put something together. Just think through that night over and over in my head, like, and I'm sure my mom does. I'm sure my other family members too. No one ever should have anything like this ever done to them, and if it is done, they deserve justice.
Please keep sharing Kelly's story, and if you have any information about Kelly's case, no matter how insignificant or small you may think that it is, please contact the Madison Area Crime Stoppers at 608-266-6014. Thank you for taking the time to get to know Kelly today, and don't forget, every time you share a face, you get closer to solving a case, and I will see you all back here tomorrow for Wisconsin, day number 4.